Beneath your feet, the ground hums with machinery that never stops. Pipes groan overhead. Gears turn endlessly below. In the distance, the Hive's heartbeat never falters. Welcome to Corvinus Prime, an imperial world built on labor, regulation, and devotion. Among its billions, crammed into steel and smoke, lies Hive Turs. And within Hive Turs, a forgotten corner. Unit 77 Alpha 998, 12 meters long, 8 wide, 3 high. Rust lines the edges. Paint flakes off the walls like dead skin. A metal box in an endless maze. On record, it's just another dwelling. In truth, it's the whole world for one family. Inside lives Matthias Vuhl, a manufacturing worker, grade 7. His wife Sarah, their teenage twins, Castor and Lydia. For 37 years, this has been their home. The air is thick, always recycled, always tainted with dust and promethium fumes. The walls sweat with condensation. Pipes rattle with boiling water, destined for nobles high above. The floor vibrates faintly with machines 15 levels below. Nothing changes here. Nothing ever will. Every morning, the brass chronometer rings at 6. Its thin metallic chime cuts through the stale air. Sarah rises first. Her hands are stained blue-green from a lifetime at the textile looms. 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, 1 day of worship. That is her cycle. The twins fold their cots into the walls. Castor reports to plasma conduit maintenance, exposed to radiation levels deemed acceptable by the administratum. Lydia spends her days packaging ration bars for strangers who will never know her name. Their futures decided by a clerk, stamped in triplicate. And then there's Matthias. He stares at his reflection in a pitted mirror. The young man in his work photo is gone. His gray jumpsuit hangs loose. His ID badge dangles like a shackle. Breakfast is protein paste. Gray, brown, yellow, each as flavorless as the last. The water reclamation unit dispenses something drinkable, technically. Lately, it tastes metallic. Nobody else seems to notice. The family eats in silence. Not because of anger, because there's nothing left to say. The preacher calls it the Emperor's blessing. Certainty, order, peace. But Matthias has begun to notice things. 3 months ago, he heard it for the first time. Scratching in the walls. At first, he thought it was nothing, just the hive settling. Pipes shift, steel groans, cracks spread. That's normal. But then came the whispers. They arrived in the deepest hours of night. When Sarah and the twins slept, Matthias lay awake and listened. Beneath the hum of machinery, beneath the hiss of vents, something else. Faint, breathy, voices. At first he thought it was dreams, but night after night, the sounds returned. And the more he listened, the more certain he became. The whispers weren't random. They had tone, cadence, purpose. And they came from the wall he shared with his neighbors, the Korvac family. But the Korvacs worked night shifts. They shouldn't have been home. They shouldn't have been awake. Matthias thought of filing a complaint. Form 797 Delta, noise disturbance. But complaints bring inspections, and inspections bring risks. A bureaucrat could declare the building compromised, force relocation. And in Hive Turs, relocation was worse than death. So Matthias stayed silent. But the whispers grew bolder. And then he saw it, a crack on his wall just beneath the ceiling. Barely 15 centimeters, jagged, at first insignificant, but each day it grew longer, wider. When he pressed his ear against it, the voices grew clear. Something was inside the wall, something alive. That night he sat awake, staring at the fracture, listening, waiting. And though his family slept peacefully beside him, Matthias knew he was not alone anymore. The crack in the wall widened. At first, it was nothing more than a hairline fracture, easy to ignore. But over the next week, Matthias saw the change. The line crawled jaggedly across the ochre paint, breathing faint drafts of stale air. And when he pressed his ear against it, the whispers were unmistakable. Dozens of voices, sometimes murmuring, sometimes chanting. Always urgent, always just out of reach, yet no one else seemed to hear them. Sarah came home numb from the looms. The twins dragged themselves in, exhausted. When Matthias mentioned the sounds, they only shrugged. Just pipes, father. Just the hive settling, but Matthias knew the hive's groans. He had lived with them for decades. This was not the hive. This was alive. One night when the others slept, he finally gathered the courage. He lifted his work lamp and leaned close to the crack. Dust fell as he scraped the edge with his fingernail. The paint flaked away, revealing something strange beneath. Not metal, not stone, flesh-colored. Matthias froze. His breath caught. Impossible. Hive walls were steel and concrete. Not this. The whispers surged, hissing directly into his ear. He stumbled back, nearly waking Sarah. That night, he did not return to bed. He sat at the table until dawn, staring at the line in the wall. Days passed. The crack kept growing. The whispers spread, and Matthias began noticing changes elsewhere. Neighbors he'd known for years. Faces pale, skin damp, eyes sunken. Workers in the corridor shuffled past him in silence. When he nodded politely, they did not respond. Even his children seemed different. Castor quieter than usual, distracted as if listening. Lydia humming strange melodies under her breath. When Matthias asked about it, she blinked, confused. She claimed she didn't remember humming at all. At the shrine, Preacher Hanks thundered the usual sermons. Loyalty, obedience, faith. But Matthias noticed it. A small cluster of parishioners no longer mouthed the creed. They stood still. Too still. Eyes glassy. And when the preacher declared, "The Emperor protects!" Matthias swore he heard them whisper something else. Not words of faith. Not words of men. Something alien. The breaking point came one night. Matthias woke to find Sarah gone from bed. Panic surged through him. He crept quietly, careful not to wake the twins. And there, he found her, standing in front of the cracked wall. Her palm pressed against its surface, her lips moving silently. "Sarah," Matthias whispered. She turned, slowly, too slowly. Her eyes were half closed, her voice soft, distant. "They're calling us," she murmured. Matthias froze. "Who? Who's calling you?" For just a moment her eyes changed. A flicker of something not hers, something alien. The ones beneath. The true blood. "You'll see soon." Then, like nothing had happened, she blinked, shook her head, wandered back to bed. By morning she remembered nothing. Matthias couldn't ignore it any longer. He went to the administratum office, intent on filing the noise complaint he had delayed for so long. He asked for Form 777 Delta. But the clerk, a thin man with gray skin and trembling hands, only stared at him, without a word. The clerk slid a different form across the desk. Form 999, Zeta. Voluntary relocation. Matthias didn't take it. He left quickly, pulse hammering in his ears. As he walked the corridors, he swore the whispers followed him. That night, the crack split wider than ever. Paint and dust rained down, and from within the gap, Matthias saw movement. Something pale, glistening, something with too many limbs. He staggered back, his lamp clattering to the floor, and then came the voice. Not a whisper now. A word, clear, direct, spoken inside his skull. "Join." Matthias froze. The air turned heavy. Behind him, shadows shifted in the corners. His children stirred in their cots. Sarah mumbled in her sleep, and the wall pulsed, alive. For the first time, Matthias realized the truth. His home was no longer just steel and concrete. It was infected, and the infection was spreading. Were voices, dozens layered together, speaking in rhythm. "Join us. Serve us. Become whole." He stumbled back, knees hitting the table. His children stirred but didn't wake. Sarah mumbled in her sleep, lips forming the same words he heard in his mind. Matthias wanted to scream, to smash the wall open, to drag whatever horror lived inside into the light, but fear held him captive. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. The wall grew silent. The whispers fell away. The silence pressed in so heavily that Matthias thought his own heartbeat might give him away. But he knew now. Something was here, in their home, waiting. The next morning, nothing seemed unusual. Sarah prepared protein paste with her usual faint smile. Castor adjusted his work badge. Lydia tied her boots. They looked normal, spoke normal. But their movements were too smooth, too precise. And when their eyes met his, Matthias felt something else watching through them. At the manufactorum, he sought distraction, but the silence there was worse. Workers bent over machines in perfect rhythm. No chatter, no curses, no laughter. Only the pounding of pistons and the hiss of steam. And then Matthias saw the marks. Thin scars along their necks. Small punctures at the base of the skull. Hidden beneath collars, but visible if you looked closely. He looked too closely. A man he'd known for years turned toward him. And smiled. Not a human smile. Too wide, too sharp. Something wrong. Matthias fled. That evening, when he returned home, Sarah was waiting at the table. The twins stood silently behind her. "You've been restless," she said calmly. Too calmly. "You've been asking questions." Matthias froze. He hadn't told her. He hadn't told anyone. Sarah reached across the table, touching his hand. Her skin was cold, clammy. "It's all right, husband. There is no need to fear. The change is a gift. The Hive Father watches over us now." Matthias's mouth went dry. "The Hive Father?" Her smile widened. Behind her, the twins nodded in eerie unison. And in that moment, Matthias realized his family was gone. Not dead. Worse, claimed that night he couldn't sleep. The chronometer ticked endlessly. The crack in the wall had become an opening. No longer just a fracture, it breathed, flesh-colored, pulsing faintly with a heartbeat. And inside something moved, shapes shifting in the shadows, claws scraping against unseen walls. Then he saw it clearly. A face pressed close to the gap, its skin smooth, wet, pale, its skull elongated, its eyes black voids. Its mouth never moved, yet its voice filled his mind. "You are chosen. You will join. You will serve the brood." Matthias staggered back, chest heaving. "No," he gasped. "No, I serve the Emperor." For a long moment the thing only stared, then it hissed. The wall split further, dust cascading across the floor. From the bedrooms, Sarah and the twins emerged, but not as they had been. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, their movements stiff, unnatural. And in perfect unison their voices carried across the room. "The Emperor is dead. The father lives." Matthias bolted. He ripped open the hab door and stumbled into the corridor, heart hammering like a drum. Shadows stretched across the hallway. Neighbors stepped from their units, faces slack, eyes glowing, lips moving in whispers. "The father lives. The father lives." Matthias ran down stairwells, through narrow corridors, past hundreds of faces all turned toward him, every mouth chanting the same alien creed. The hive itself seemed alive now. The walls pulsed. Vents exhaled strange, foul odors. Machinery no longer hummed. It beat, like a living heart. And all around him, voices. In his head, in his bones. Stop. Surrender. Join. Finally, he collapsed in a forgotten service tunnel, pressing his palms to his ears, desperate to silence the whispers. But they were inside him now, clawing at his thoughts. For the first time in his life, Matthias prayed. Truly prayed. Not the hollow words of the daily creed, but desperate, broken pleas. "Emperor, help me, please." Darkness pressed in. His vision blurred. And just before unconsciousness claimed him, he saw silhouettes at the far end of the tunnel. Armored figures, weapons glinting with the aquila of the Imperium. The voices inside him shrieked in rage, and then everything went black. When Matthias opened his eyes, the world had changed. He was lying on a cold steel floor. His ears rang. His vision swam. The faint glow of lumen strips flickered overhead, and standing over him, men in flak armor. "Lays guns ready." Armor marked with the double-headed aquila of the Imperium. "Found him wandering," one voice muttered. "Human. Tired. Still breathing. Not one of them." Not yet. They hauled Matthias to his feet and dragged him deeper into the tunnels. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope returned. The guards led him into a makeshift command post. Vox units crackled with static. Data slates glowed with maps of Hive terrors. Around a rusted table stood soldiers in battered uniforms, the Imperial Guard. And among them, cloaked in black, Rosarius shimmering faintly with light, an Inquisitor. Her gaze burned with certainty. She stepped forward. "You've seen them," she said flatly. "Tell me what you know." The words poured out of him. The whispers. The wall, his wife, his children, claimed by something alien. His voice shook as he confessed everything. The Inquisitor listened without a flicker of emotion. When he finished, she gave a single nod. "The infection is confirmed," she said. "Deeper than we thought. Infection?" Matthias rasped. "Genestealers," she replied. "Xenos filth. They spread through blood and faith. They claim minds, families, entire hives. Your family's gone, worker. Their bodies live. Their souls are claimed." Matthias shook his head violently. "No, there must be a way." "There isn't," she cut him off coldly. "There never is." The hours that followed blurred into chaos. The guard deployed. Bolters primed. Laser guns charged. Explosions rumbled in the distance. Over the Vox, voices reported infestations, ambushes, entire hab blocks gone silent. And then, Matthias saw them. The Genestealers. Pale flesh stretched over hooked claws. Elongated skulls, jaws dripping saliva, black eyes glistening in the dark. They moved like insects, climbing walls, crawling across ceilings, striking with impossible speed. The guard fired in volleys. Lasgun beams cut through the dark. Explosions lit the tunnels. The Inquisitor advanced calmly, bolt pistol roaring. Each shot a prayer. Each kill a benediction. Matthias clung to cover, paralyzed with terror. And then, he saw them. Sarah, Castor, Lydia. They moved with the cultists. Still human in shape, but wrong. Twisted by alien grace. Eyes glowing faintly. Lips whispering the same chant he had heard so many nights before. "The Father lives. The Father lives." "Don't look at them," A guardsman barked, dragging Matthias back. They're not yours anymore! But Matthias couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop hearing their voices. His family, still theirs but not. The battle raged for hours. The guard held line after line, but the swarm was endless. Every shrine, every corridor, every home, infested. Matthias realized the truth. Hive Terrace was lost. The Inquisitor gave the order without hesitation. Purge it. Demolition charges planted. Firebombs armed. Vox units crackled with confirmations. Blocks destroyed. Tunnels sealed. Millions abandoned to burn. Matthias stared at her in horror. You're going to kill everyone. Millions of innocents. The Inquisitor's eyes were stone. There are no innocents here. Only the tainted and the untainted. Better ashes than infection. The final moment came in fire. The guard fell back to the outer bastion. The ground quaked as orbital strikes began. Towers collapsed into flame. The sky itself glowed red. Screams filled the air, human and inhuman alike. Matthias stood at the edge, watching his world die. Smoke curled around him. The whispers inside his skull howled. He thought of Sarah's hands, stained blue-green from the looms, of Castor's quiet smile, of Lydia's strange humming. His family, his life, gone. The Inquisitor turned to him one last time. Remember this, worker. The Emperor protects, but only through fire. A burning tower collapsed in the distance, throwing sparks into the night. The Hive was becoming a tomb. Matthias fell to his knees, sobbing, as the sky itself burned. And deep beneath the rubble, where fire could not reach, the whispers still lived. Soft, patient, eternal.